Societal attitudes towards same-sex relationships has evolved over the past century at the same pace as filmmaking itself.
Wait a minute, you ain't heard nothing.
It was over a century ago, in 1895, when the first film where synchronized sound with moving pictures had been exhibited, titled the Dixon Experimental Sound Film. This is in a time where the homosexual community were repressed by law enforcement and even punished in accordance with current laws of the state for acts of homosexuality. Audiences at the time were shocked to see a subversion of conventional male behavior because two men were dancing around in a manner traditionally danced by a man and woman, and later labelled the film the Gay Brothers. It was noted that men were paranoid about standing too close together after the film, afraid of being labelled gay. Technically, it was unacceptable to categorically say who's gay back then. In fact, gay characters were identified as sissy or pansy characters in film terminology. And by the 1920s, film was well on its way to forming its industry, and filmmakers had begun presenting the crudest ideas and challenging the moral beliefs of society. By 1914, New York hosted the Lesbian and Gay Festival, where the film A Florida Enchantment was a story of a woman turning into a man and vice versa, displaying acts of lesbian and gay relations. The sissy character was a hit, and there was no other way to portray a gay character on screen and keep everyone happy. Even so, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops rated any film with significant gay content as morally offensive. In 1930, the film Morocco hosted the first lesbian kiss on screen. It was the beginning of the Great Depression, and filmmakers were being urged to drive up the shock value in their films to draw in their audiences. The result was filmmakers using tales of violence, prostitution, and use of the sissy character again. 1934, Wonderbar nearly got shut down for a single scene where a man approaches another man asking him to dance. It was Warner Brothers' greatest hit in the 30s and 40s. 1934, the Legion of Decency, led by representatives of the Roman Catholic community and film industry leaders, formed the new production code. Administration, which was a body that reviewed and approved films in accordance with what was considered moral and decent films, any homosexual representation with this body in effect could only be shown as a villain or a victim of a crime they have committed as a result of their homosexual nature. 1953, Glenn or Glenda, the director Ed Wood was a cross-dresser, and he made a documentary-style film about Glenda, a transvestite who identifies as a woman. The film was intended to be a plea for tolerance, that our inner parts can be of the opposite sex of our outside parts biologically, and that this is a real thing, not a mental delusion. The film flopped and went down in history as a cult classic. Worst film ever. 1959, and filmmakers were beginning to sack the production code and unleash the true depictions of society and the kinds of people it produces. Some Like It Hot openly had gay men and bi-curious women, proud drag queens, and a series of entertaining comedic events that made it the most successful film of the century. Not just for the ticket sales it acquired, but because it officially killed the Hays Code, forcing the PCA to retire and introduce the Motion Picture Association, which assigned the rating system that films still use today.
This was directly in line with the emergence of modern queer activism, helping to shift society's mindset to the acceptance of individual identities. Since then, we have seen an increase in queer representation and the way in which these identities have begun to be portrayed on screen. Whilst rare, TV shows such as Modern Family, Grey's Anatomy, and Queer as Folk include LGBT families and their struggles. These representations are important for queer visibility in showing that whilst they may have different obstacles and frustrations, these families are no different to heterosexual families.
Okay, you know what? I don't need to sit here and be condescended to. I'm gonna make myself an iced tea.
I will bring you down.
You can't bring me down.
We have also seen an increase in diverse racial representation of the LGBT community in both TV shows and films such as Glee, Pretty Little Liars, Moonlight, and The Half of It, which has been powerful in providing visibility for queer people of color. Depictions of coming out have been vital for queer audiences who are seeking reassurance that their identity is normal and they are not alone. Films such as The Happier Season, Boy Erased, and Kissing Jessica Steen are important in providing relatable content to LGBT people, enabling them the confidence to step out and express themselves.
I think she's a very nice girl.
A groundbreaking example of positive representation is the 2018 film Love, Simon, which has been acknowledged as the first gay teen movie backed by a major studio. John Haley from the University of Notre Dame mentions how this film addresses both queer and non-queer individuals, placing Simon as a character who, like any other person, deserves to have their love story shared. This film shows that gay males do not have to be effeminate and includes diverse representation, with the main love interest being a Jewish person of color. The film also touches on the topic of coming out in a sensitive manner, but shows the varying emotions from family members coming to terms with the news.
Come here.
One component of queer representation on screen that still requires progression is the common cliched representation of queer men being comedic relief as the gay best friend. Take for example Damien from Mean Girls. Unlike other supporting characters in the film, he's portrayed as the sassy gay friend with not much other depth. Or Jack from Will and Grace, who is stereotypically portrayed as a diva, promiscuous, and is quite flamboyant. These stereotypical tropes are damaging to queer representation as they reinforce preconceived ideas about gay men and hide their struggles and story, unless it's to support the straight main character. Other damaging representations include the predatory butch lesbian, as evident in Pitch Perfect, with the character Cynthia constantly groping another character without their consent, as well as the bury your gays trope, which portrays the depths of queer women on screen, such as Lexa in The 100, Dana from The L Word, Naomi from Skins, and many more. This trope is problematic as it depicts queer women as easily expendable to further the plot or storyline for a non-LGBT character. Despite these controversial depictions, it is important to acknowledge the progressions of queer representation in film over the decades. We are beginning to see more complex queer characters emerging on screen, reigning in a new era of acceptance and visibility which needs to continue for the film industry to become truly inclusive.